The story begins in 1963 when astrophysics student Stephen Hawking, while attending a party, meets Jane Wilde, a fellow student at Cambridge University, who is studying literature. Both are working for their PhDs. The two bond during the night, and Jane gives Stephen her phone number. Stephen does not focus on his thesis. Instead, he concentrates on his relationship with Jane, and they attend the Maybell together. Stephen first notices he is not able to walk quickly when he and his professor go to a lecture on black holes. Stephen begins to wonder about black holes and their part in the creation of the universe. While pursuing his research, Stephen's muscles begin to give out while walking, causing him to fall and hit his head. Visiting the hospital, the doctor tells him that he has motor neuron disease and that although his brain will remain unchanged, his muscles will soon be uncontrollable and that he will be unable to walk, talk, swallow, or move most of his body. He is told that he is approximately 2 years to live.
Jane tells Stephen that she loves him. Jane talks with Stephen's parents, who explain the full situation to her, and Jane says that she will stick by Stephen. Cheered up by Jane and friends, Stephen tells his professor that his thesis paper will be about time. Soon after, Stephen and Jane marry and have a son. Stephen's ability to talk has become progressively worse. When he finally presents his thesis to the examination board that the black hole was responsible for the creation of the universe, they tell him his theory is revolutionary and he is awarded his doctorate. However, while celebrating with Jane and his friends, Stephen realizes he is now unable to walk and he becomes dependent on a wheelchair. After having a second child, a daughter, Stephen has a theory about the visibility of black holes. He presents his theory at a lecture where the professors are astounded that Stephen has discovered what none of them had been able to. This leads to Stephen beginning to become a world-renowned physicist. Stephen soon gets an electric wheelchair, allowing him to move around with the limited function he has left.
However, while focusing on her kids, Stephen's health and his increasing fame, Jane is unable to get work done on her own thesis paper. And in order to get rid of her depression, she joins a church choir, where she meets a handsome conductor named Jonathan. Soon, the Hawkins and Jonathan became friends, and he starts helping the family. Afterwards, Jane becomes pregnant with a third child. After the birth, Stephen's parents begin to suspect a relationship between Jonathan and Jane, but she denies everything. Anyway, Jonathan stays away from the family for a while, but Stephen visits him, saying that Jane needs him. With his fame increasing, Stephen is invited to a concert in Bordeaux. While in France, Stephen contracts pneumonia, and Jane decides to save him with a tracheotomy, which will render Stephen speechless. Hiring a helper, Elaine, Stephen begins to use a spelling board, and uses it to communicate with Elaine. Stephen soon receives a computer with a built-in voice synthesizer, and he uses it to write his international bestseller, A Brief History of Time.
One day, however, Stephen tells Jane that he has been invited to America to accept an award, and he will be taking Elaine with him. Jane is upset that Stephen has not invited her, and this becomes the trigger for Jane and Stephen's realization they can no longer remain married. Stephen goes to a lecture with Elaine, the two having fallen in love. At the same time, Jane goes to see Jonathan, the two reuniting as well. While at his lecture in America, Stephen sees a student in the front of the room drop a pen from her desk. Stephen imagines himself getting up to return it, almost crying at the reminder how his disease has affected him. However, he presses on and gives an inspiring speech about human endeavor, the audience giving him a standing ovation. Soon after, while Jane and Jonathan are living together, Jane receives a letter from Stephen, inviting her to meet the Queen with him. Jane and Stephen reunite as they meet her. Stephen and Jane look out to see their children playing, and Stephen joyfully types, "Look what we made." Closing text says that Jane and Jonathan get married later, and that Jane and Stephen remain close friends to this day.